Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining. My name is Ellen Spencer. I'm just giving a couple seconds for people to join. Are we good, Lance, or do we need to give it another second?
I'd give it a little bit. I got about 13 participants. I think some more should filter in.
Okay, we're just going to give just a second as people filter in.
Yeah, a couple more just join.
All right, well, maybe we'll just probably go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
People will filter in, and this will be recorded to access later. So once again, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ellen Spencer. I'm a senior system administrator for the University of Texas System. I'm joined by my colleague and my teammate, Lance Russell. Lance is going to help out today by keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. It's hard in a webinar to keep things interactive, but I'd like to as much as possible. Lance, do you want to take a second and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Like Alan said, we work together on the VMware environment. Been in IT for 26 years, and currently I'm the VDI SME. But we work together on this private AI project, and it's been a journey, quite the learning experience. So back to you, Ellen.
Yeah, thank you. So I am a very long-term VMware administrator. So long that I've kind of stopped counting the years. I was in there at the very beginning. I started virtualizing my first workloads somewhere in the mid 2000s. I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. And I really haven't looked back. So I'm Lance and I are speaking to you today, not as an employee of Broadcom, not as representing any reseller. We're just fellow VMware administrators hoping to share what we know in hopes that it might help you along with your journey. So we're a little bit different in that respect, in that we don't have an agenda. We don't want anything from you. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're just here to try and help. So today we want to walk you through the process of how you might bring private AI into your data center, starting from the initial idea through all the decisions, the hardware acquisitions, all the things you have to do, to the implementation and the maintenance. There's so many different ways to orchestrate a deployment. We're not here to tell you that there's one way or you should do it this way, you should do it that way. We're just here to show you some of the different ways that can happen so you can make the best decision for your environment. As I mentioned, we work for the University of Texas System. UT System is comprised of 9 academic institutions as well as 4 health institutions. We specifically work for UT Shared Services, meaning, just as the name implies, that we offer shared services to our partner institutions. We're actually part of a small system administration team, and believe it or not, our main job is to support mostly ERP systems. This whole AI project kind of came in under other duties as assigned, if you're familiar with that phrasing. So we're here to talk about AI. And AI is a phrase that, oh gosh, it's just everywhere. You get to the point where you don't really want to hear it anymore. So why do we care? Why should we care about AI? And the answer is, well, it's here. It's not going anywhere, at least in the short term. So whether you think it can solve all the world's problems, or you think you've seen the end of this movie and you don't like where it's going, make friends with it. It can help you. It's super cool. It's super powerful, but I would be remiss if I didn't suggest or mention that we need to be responsible with it. Something about with great power comes great responsibility. I think I heard that somewhere. Before I dive in, I just want to touch on a couple of concepts that sometimes I see causing confusion or maybe being misstated. The first is one of the goals that we're trying to do when we're building an AI environment. Are we building an infrastructure to handle inference, or are we trying to build an infrastructure where we're trying to actually train models? And especially in AI, but certainly in technology, sometimes words don't always mean the same thing from one person to another. When we're talking about training, we're talking about taking large data sets, lots of compute, long processing time to actually create a large language model. When we talk about inference, which is what we're doing, we're using one of those pre-made large language models to query against and do inference. Now, there are steps in between inference and training. RAG kind of falls in between, where we take an external source like a document, a website, and we combine that with the pre-trained large language model to get more updated information. There's also a process of refinement in the middle, and we could talk about any of these topics for as long as you wanted to. The last piece is in the responsibilities, the sysadmin role versus the developer role. We are a system administrator team, which means we're handling the infrastructure. We're handling the hosts, the GPUs, the drivers, the operating systems, all of that. We're not actually doing the coding to write the applications, to run the workloads. And the AI solution has to be a partnership between your administrators and your developers. I'm guessing that a good part of our VMUG crowd is probably more under the sysadmin, but we might have some developers. We might have some crossover because the lines get really blurry. But especially when we're having conversations with leadership, it's important to kind of set an expectation about which group or which group of groups is going to handle which tasks and make that expectation appropriate. So talking about our journey specifically, our project started about 2 years ago, which right now feels like an eternity, but it started out with a pretty casual conversation amongst leadership saying, hey, we need to dive into and explore the AI space. It's everywhere, it's coming. That, of course, evolved, got handed around, and came to us as a project. The catch was, we didn't quite know what we didn't know. What did we want to do? How did we want to do it? Those were all things that we had to go through. But specifically, we knew we wanted to build a secure, stable, enterprise-ready, and private AI environment. We are UT Shared Services, so GPU or LLM as a shared service makes sense in our service offerings. We also wanted to allow our campus partners to do internal development on our environment instead of asking each institution to buy their own hardware. We specifically wanted to move quickly, but grow slowly. When you talk to people in this space trying to figure out AI, sometimes they buy all the hardware and then try to figure out what to do with it, and you end up with hardware sitting idle. Of course, a framework and infrastructure is really cool, but it doesn't sell too well. So we said, okay, we need an application. We're going to start with a ChatGPT-like AI application. Now, most of us have done something with AI at this point. In fact, most companies are doing something with AI. They just may not be doing it on-prem. They may be doing it in the cloud. And you may be asking yourself, okay, why private and why now? Well, the answer to private is kind of in the title, isn't it? It's privacy. You're keeping your data in your data center and you're not shipping it out. In 2026, this may even be more important as we bring in more and more agentic workloads. Agentic workloads will churn up a lot of tokens. Tokens will increase those cloud costs. I've seen just a really recent shift even in the industry where hardware manufacturers are actually building GPU for the desktop, like a standalone GPU module, exactly for development of agentic because of those tokens. There's a number of memes out there on the internet making jokes about how companies are going to have to hire more people because the people are cheaper than the tokens. Of course, it's all very satirical, but it kind of makes the point that all of this stuff is, as more and more companies adapt and implement AI and start putting these agents out there, the token count is not going to slow down. And private is a great way to salute that. And I forgot to mention at the top of my little talk that among the ways that you can make friends with AI is to have AI make silly little drawings and graphics for your presentation. So my line is going to be that if you think these slides are awesome, that's all me. If you think they're not very good, it was AI. I just didn't have time to do anything about it. Okay, so we knew what we wanted to do. We wanted to build this framework. We were pretty much all starting from ground zero. We really didn't know where to start. So we got together with our leadership and with our developing partners, and we tried to make a framework. The purpose of the framework is just to explain what components do we need and how are those components going to fit together. We knew we needed hardware, right? We need GPUs. Our hardware, we're going to have storage, we're going to have processing, we're going to have network. Okay, fine. How are we going to handle the data? How are the models going to fit in? How are we going to orchestrate it all? And what applications are we going to run? So we just kind of laid out this framework. We had no idea how to fill it in, but that was part of the journey. So that was our starting point. Now, for me personally, I like to do what I call the hello world test. Whenever I have a new project, I like to do something simple just to prove it can be done. And you can do this today with AI if you're interested. It's best if you have a VM with more than one CPU, but it doesn't have to be. If you don't know this already, AI typically runs on Linux and containers. So you can just take a VM, install Ubuntu on it, throw Docker on it, and you can actually download OpenWebUI, which is a chat application, the chat application that we've decided to start with, and Olama, and you can actually put up a smaller large language model and you can query against it. It's not going to be fast. I do not recommend you deploy it in your enterprise, but it does work and it shows you this can be done. There's also the inference engine under C++, the Llama C++, which has actually been doing some pretty amazing things in serving up models on CPU. There's other talks that talk about that specifically, and it's pretty cool as well. That's another option. But in the end of the day, we kind of know at the bottom of this diagram is the hardware, right? So now we need to go hardware shopping. That is a whole nother subject unto itself. I will say, I highly recommend that you work with a trusted hardware vendor. Tend to be a Dell shop. So for us, that was Dell. And we had discussions and partnerships between Dell and VMware both to make sure that we designed a good solution. You do not want to be in a world where you're trying to make drivers work or you have compatibility problems. You want to make sure that when you put this all together, that it's all going to work. And because remember, we're talking about enterprise, that it can be deployed and scaled. So you want to make sure that you work with a vendor who's going to give you a certified solution. Ideally, you would like a long-term roadmap, but in 2026, that is, at least as near as I've been able to see, doesn't really exist. That solution will include some GPUs. There are different levels of GPUs, of course, with different price points, and different form factors. For us specifically, we were trying to grow slowly and we were trying to keep costs under control. So we wanted to specifically stick with air cooling for now. We're still waiting for our data center to be ready for liquid. We know it's coming, but we're not quite ready yet. So we said, okay, we want to start with air cooled. Well, that affects the form factor that we're choosing for our GPU. I'll show you in a second when we actually decided on, but also know that there are lower level GPUs available. Again, your hardware vendor can help you with that. You need to do your sizing homework. You need to figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and right size it. I can't, in this time, I can't really go into sizing exercises, but I will say you cannot be too detailed in this step and make sure that you're communicating that with everybody that you're talking with, because all of that comes together. Again, you don't want to have a cooling problem. You want to have enough space to do your workloads. You want to make sure all of that is covered. And lastly, one of the things that makes all of this easier and nice, and I'll get into that in a second, is the NVIDIA software that comes with it. Just know that not every NVIDIA GPU includes the NVIDIA Enterprise software. Just something to be aware of, to keep an eye on. So with that all in mind, we sat down with Dell, we sat down with VMware, and we talked and we planned and we tested and we did a bunch of things. And remember, this is 2024, which hardware world is like an eternity ago. And we came up with this plan. Remember, and we wanted to minimize costs. We wanted an air-cooled solution, and we wanted to be able to scale. So for the management, we settled on a plain 2U R760 Intel-based server, well equipped with a terabyte of RAM. 4 of them for full cluster capability for management. And then for the actual GPU workloads, the 760XA, also Intel-based, each equipped with 4 H100 NVL GPUs. This gave us a bank. By the time we got to full implementation, we had some baby steps in the middle. But at the end of that implementation, we ended up with 12 H100 GPUs at what I'm going to call a reasonable cost. None of this is cheap, I'm sorry, but for a pretty reasonable cost. And the plan was that when we needed to scale up, we would just add more of these R760XA hosts. You can probably guess what I'm going to say in 2 slides ahead. But of course, what do you suppose happens in an enterprise when people find out, hey, they have some GPUs and we're going to let other people use them? Well, all of a sudden, everybody comes forward with their use cases. All kinds of wonderful, useful, I said wonderful twice, use cases, and that kind of eats up your GPUs. The other things that can eat up your GPUs are just embedding models, tooling, things that maybe you didn't plan for out of the gate. Let me just say simply, your GPUs go quicker than you think they're going to. And then you end up expanding again. So as predicted, when it was time to add another host, it was like, no, the R760s and H100s are pretty much end of life. Okay, so we move on to the next thing. And this one still is, to my knowledge, relevant. We moved up to a larger form factor, XE7740 with more memory, and now 8 H200 NVL GPUs. Again, sticking with our air-cooled, growing as we go along plan. And it was kind of cool because adding one host pretty much doubled our GPU capacity. And when I gave this presentation the first time, it was like a little bit of sarcasm of, at a modest price increase, of course. I don't want to know what this server costs in 2026, but we all know, or if you don't know, server prices have gone up substantially in the last 6 months. And that's just a reality we live in. And it will just help us make smarter decisions moving forward, but it's just the world that we live in right now. So I haven't talked about platform yet, and the reality is that we looked at the hardware and the platform at the same time. Presentation-wise, I'm choosing to do it after the hardware, but we really walked into this project with an open mind. We were not set on we're going to do this or we're going to do that. We wanted to look at all of our options and we wanted to make the best option. Well, we're talking about AI workloads, so we're basically talking about containers. When you get right down to it, you're either going to go bare metal Kubernetes or you're going to virtualize. And again, I don't presume to tell anybody else what they should be doing, but we know that time and money typically are inversely proportional. So for us, we had a very strong VMware internal skill set. They wanted this implemented quickly with minimal cost, but they wanted everything to be fully supported. For those reasons, VMware was a front runner from the get-go, but we still went through all the steps. At the end of the day, our team's uplift to go full bore Kubernetes was fairly great. Support could be difficult, and it would probably take us a little bit longer. So again, not trying to tell anybody else this is the only way, just explaining how we got to where we are. The other piece that was somewhat of a slam dunk, and I'll go ahead and apologize to the private AI team because I bet this slide is old. But 2 years ago at VMware Explore, we had a great conversation with Chris Gulley, who was talking about this new product called VMware Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA. And other than the name just rolling right off your tongue, it was actually a product that solved a lot of the problems that we were really concerned about and hemming and hawing. One of the hardest things about implementing AI is simply getting your GPU drivers onto the system, getting everything loaded and working. With Private AI Foundation, because it rides on automation, VMware does all of that for you. You click a button in automation, it spits out what they call a deep learning VM. It has all the drivers on it. You're ready to run NVIDIA SME. Say, hey, here's all my drivers, and you're ready to go. It really was a giant easy button for at least for me, what I was the most anxious about. The second thing that VMware, did you have something to add, Lance?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like we can't shout out enough about how well
Yes.
the VMware team did hand holding us. They had on-site whiteboard sessions where we really hashed all this out. They did such a great job. Now that they're probably covered up with a lot of interest, they may not be able to give you the same amount of time that we had, but I will say we were impressed and couldn't have done it without them.
Yes, and anybody who spends any time around me knows that I don't impress easily and I don't boast very often, but this team really, they're really dedicated to this product. There have been so many improvements. It has really been pretty cool. Um, What this also brings to the table, assuming that you buy GPUs that include the NVIDIA Enterprise license or you purchase the NVIDIA Enterprise license, you get the NVIDIA support stack and the NVIDIA support software. So you get access to the NIMs, which are basically pre-deployed models. The NIM is a specialized container, effectively, basically ready to run. You get access to their blueprints and some of their Nemo retrievers and some of their Nemo services, which you can also do cool things with. Private AI has really grown as well. In fact, you guys are kind of catching us in an odd time because we've just completed our upgrade to VCF 9. Partly why, if I had a little bit more time, I would have done a little bit more work on the slides, but we've been busy. But they're adding in the model gallery, the more AI blueprints, the ability to build agents, tie in MCP. This product has really evolved. I assume it's evolved even more in 9.1, and I know they've got more coming out in the upcoming releases. I can't speak to that, but I have heard whispers, and there's a lot of really cool things to come. This is the thing that I am the most excited about because it's making our deployment easier. And as Lance mentioned, they gave us a lot of support. So that has been really huge and really appreciated. And no, we're not here because they put us up to it or anything like that. I would not be here if I didn't believe the words that were coming out of my mouth. I don't lie well. I'm a sysadmin.
And you can't have their names; they're ours.
Yeah, oh, totally. Yeah, totally. All right. So we've kind of filled out the bottom of our little chart, right? We've got our hardware. We settled on VCF. So you've got to go through the steps of building the VCF infrastructure. We started on 5.2. To keep costs down, and because we already had the hardware, we went ahead and equipped the hosts with NVMe drives and just ran vSAN. It gave us sort of, again, an easy way to get access to fast storage to get this up and running very quickly. The other piece I want to mention is that because we're doing inference and because we're growing into our solution, we just implemented 100 gig Ethernet because it was more than we need today. We know that we'll eventually outgrow it, but the speed at which this industry is going, it's hard to say what future proofing looks like. If you figure it out, I'd love to know that. And we're running the ConnectX, the NVIDIA ConnectX 6 NICs in the infrastructure. So moving on up our chart, the higher we get up in the chart, the further we're removed from the actual infrastructure and the closer we get to the development. So this is where the kind of these roles start to merge and life starts to get a little bit interesting. Um, of course, with VCF, we have automation, which makes our lives a whole lot easier, and we have access to VKS. So we can actually grow into Kubernetes, which is our ultimate goal. It's just something that we're skilling up for, I guess I should say. I also want to mention the Data Services Manager, or DSM, which also comes as part of the VCF Private AI Foundation. And it's pretty much database as a service. We all have, we've all done different jobs and roles through our career, and some things you like doing than others. I've never particularly wanted to be a DBA. So again, this is, and please don't misunderstand, I'm not saying that DBA can be replaced by this tool. I'm saying for AI, where we're largely storing just like an app user table and vector stores, DSM does a great job of self-managing it. I can scale the database with the click. You can back it up, you can clone them, you can create them. DSM has been very helpful. We have only used it with Postgres, but as you can see, it supports more, and they're adding more. And again, this slide's probably out of date. So the further we step out of VCF directly, then we start adding in other services. If we're going to serve up private AI, we need some models. The easiest way to serve up the models is, again, with those NVIDIA NIMs. The NVIDIA NIMs serve up as OpenAI endpoints that you can connect to remotely. You can, of course, serve up your models from Hugging Face, usually on VLLM or something similar. The catch about all that is control and knowing how much traffic, how many tokens you're pushing. So to control access to our models, we needed a gateway. We've settled for the moment. Everything on this chart could be changed tomorrow or maybe yesterday, maybe I don't know yet. Light LLM. Light LLM allows us to sort of gate access to the models, track, see who's using them. In our case, because we're sharing them with various institutions, of course, everybody wants to know who's using what. You can apply quotas and limits and things like that, all within that. We may eventually outgrow Light LLM, but it's working for us today. It is also an open source product. So moving on up the stack, we're kind of up to the applications. And the applications are probably where we're the furthest away from the actual VMware stack, because this is where the developers are going to come in and play heavily, and then us as sysadmins and just installing software. So the biggest challenge that we had is waiting for the industry to catch up with our needs. When we started out, just finding a chat application was a challenge because we wanted to do it at scale to multiple institutions, meaning we need central naming. We need it to work with Entra with OAuth, right? You don't want to be managing all these individual users. You need central naming. So there's a lot of products out there. The open source market is very rich, and I don't want to ever say that we looked at everything, but we had trouble finding something that ticked all the boxes. We wanted the chat abilities, we wanted RAG, we needed history, authentication, all that. And in our initial testing, we ended up on OpenWebUI. Today, we're looking at LibreChat as possibly an alternative or an addition. It's always evolving. The other thing that we wanted to be able to do was have chatbots, both chatbots externally facing for the public to interface with, and internal to effectively help employees become more efficient. Those are being internally developed because that specific application doesn't exist. They're being built on open source chat technology, and I cannot remember the name of it right now, but that's all being handled by our developers. And one of the interesting pieces of what we did was allow campus developers to come into our environment and develop. We had a very sharp team at one of our campus institutions come up with a tutoring application that they're running. They're in the process of moving into production. And we actually didn't do anything for that. We just gave them access to the resources. They brought the developers, they brought the code. It runs, and it's been a great partnership. Um, when you get into applications, you really get into that tug of war game of buy or build. I think we all kind of know the pros and cons of each. Support, cost, customization, maintenance. It's a tug of war game. And it's even harder if what you want hasn't been developed yet. The industry is moving even faster, even when I think, oh gosh, it can't get any faster, it does. It feels like half the time when I say something 10 minutes ago, someone's like, oh no, that's not true anymore. So adaptation, agility, these are things that we have to be comfortable with, even though we like to have things in line and functional and supportable for long periods of time. It's just the wonderful world of AI that we're in. But at that application layer, you can develop your own, you can buy, you can do any combination, whatever works for you. The last two bits are the things that kind of that are super important from a system administration or security perspective, but often get overlooked, and that's observability. How do we know what's going on in the system? How do we check whether systems are healthy? How do we check usage? Those are still evolving. There are more and more products coming out every day. Of course, on the actual VCF stack, we have ops. Operations is a great tool. It gives us all that information about the VMware stack. It doesn't necessarily tell us, how many tokens are being transmitted and things like that. It seems like from others I've talked to doing similar tasks that Grafana, Prometheus, Langfuse, all open source products have become fairly commonplace. VCF is doing a lot of work in this space too, and I'm not fully up to speed on all that stuff, so I won't guess, but they're doing a lot of work in the observability and monitoring as well because they're also aware of the need for this. And then lastly, security. We're not worried about security, right? It's AI, nothing can go wrong, right? So we are using right now a product called Hidden Layer, specifically the AI detection and response. It is effectively a proxy that inserts itself in between the prompt and the output, both inbound and outbound. So it will look for data leakage, prompt injection, all of those things, and it will check it on the way out as well. If you've done either reading or just talked to people, having AI agents and all that, sometimes they're so helpful that they will give out information they shouldn't. So this helps to fix that. And I'm actually doing okay on time, which I'm pretty amazed by. After many iterations, this is what our infrastructure mostly looks like today.
I think your
Again,
screen
running the
share might have stopped,
really
possibly. Maybe just
cool.
me.
Can someone throw in the chat if it's him or me?
It did stop. Okay, so yeah, try to reshare.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. I gotta get my one always wonders how that works. Oh, I've lost my permission. That's great. Um,
Anybody try to do it?
See if you can. It says send request.
Oh, try to send the request again. It popped up on my screen.
So you're
I took it. I stole it.
you took it.
I blame AI. There you go. All
So
right.
you guys seeing it
Yep.
again?
Yeah, it's good now. Yep.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So How far back did you not see? Did you see this one?
Yeah, we saw that, so just go to the next one.
Okay, okay, cool. So you did not miss much. Okay. So this is what our infrastructure looks like mostly, running the full VCF stack, um, storing the data in Postgres, serving up models. I don't have Light LLM on there, but Light LLM is the gatekeeper, running models with both NIMs, Hugging Face, taking advantage of automation, working towards VKS, running applications with monitoring in place there as well. Um, this never ends. It's always moving forward. Um, we're always thinking about the next steps. For us, we want to move everything specifically to VKS. More automation, right? More self-service. And of course, everybody wants to get into agentic. And I can pose the same question to all of you because every time I talk to people about agentic AI, they tell me that it's awesome and many people have it running in their house. And then I say, okay, what about for the enterprise? And they go, oh, not so much. So, lots of really cool, powerful stuff out there, but trying to get it to behave for the enterprise can be a little bit challenging. And I apologize that kind of the time and everything. I'd love to do some demos for you all, but we don't really have the time. So, and Lance and I, right after this is over, we'll be off to the keynote chat to talk specifically about VCF. So I would invite any or all of you to come on over there if you'd like to. But are there any questions? Or Lance, is there anything in the chat that?
No questions in the chat or QA, but we'll stay here for a few moments if people have any.
Okay.
I will say one thing. I was in a previous session. A guy was covering 9.1 VCF, and he was saying that ops will have some visibility into tokens. I checked
Yeah,
our, because as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, really? And so I went over to our environment. No, it can see
yeah,
the GPUs, but it's all coming.
it's all coming,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like a hurry up and wait for the thing that you need to be developed.
Yeah.
So that's kind
But
of
like you said, there are a lot of tools, and that's part of the journey too, is finding the right fit, navigating the space of what off-the-shelf apps will work and what open source stuff will work. We could spend a whole session on what we learned about Open Web UI. But yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for attending, and follow us over to that next session.
okay. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.